Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. In this video we are going to be talking about the new water system. First we're going to run through the basics, but before we get started, we have a new way that you guys can support the channel, and that is by using the Patreon. Links are in the description below. There are different levels so you can join at. If you want to know a little bit more about all those tiers and all those levels, please check out my live stream from last week. Now, if you're unable to subscribe to the Patreon, the best way you can also help me out is by leaving a comment, leaving a like, subscribe if you haven't, and make sure that you ring that bell for notifications. Okay, now what I have here is a very basic scene, nothing special to it. And I actually have the ocean water as it is. So we're going to discuss the basics, and I'm going to go step by step so you all can start using this system in all the ways that you guys want. So what I'm going to do is, as always, start from scratch. But before that, we need to enable some plugins. So I'm using Unreal Engine 4.26 at the moment of recording of this video. This is the first iteration. And what you need to do is go here into settings, go to plugins. Before doing anything else, we're going to go into water. You have to make sure that these two are enabled. Now, once you tick them, it's going to ask you to restart. We're not going to do that just yet. We're actually going to go into landmass, and we're going to enable this one right now. I'm going to talk about why we're enabling this one. Some people say you shouldn't. I like to enable it just because of the relation that it has to the water system. So make sure you have this one ticked up, and make sure you also have volumetrics in. If you want some nice clouds, I suggest you have volumetrics in. If you want to play with the clouds, I just have it so we can access all this nice cloud system. Alright, so after that, make sure you restart your engine, and I'll see you back in a second. Alright, another thing, if you notice here, there is a 4.26 plugin for the Megascan, so that's why you're seeing the Megascan logo up here, even though I'm using 4.26. Now, as of the moment of recording of this video, there are a little bit of issues when exporting out of Bridge with the 4.26 plugin, but the 4.25 plugin is working really well. So what I did is I just exported these materials for out of 4.25, and that's how I got all these here. The plants are from a free jungle pack that wasn't a free monthly content on the marketplace. Same this mountain right here, that's from the photorealistic backgrounds that I got from the marketplace, but these two and the rocks are from the Megascans. Now the first thing you want to do is we're going to create a new level, but I'm going to use time of day. The reason why I want to use time of day is because of the clouds. Now the volumetric clouds comes by default with this level, and that's really cool because everything is like works right out of the box. So I'm just going to select this one, and I'm not going to save the changes that I made, and there you go. It jumps straight into this one right here, which is really cool. And you can see, let me just reduce the camera speed. You can see all those nice clouds in the background. You don't have to do anything when it comes to the background just yet. So I'm just going to delete all of these, like the text. So we don't need that. We don't need the material preview, and that is it. Now we are going to create our landscape. So modes, landscape. You've seen me done this before if you've seen any of my other videos. And one of the things that we're going to do here is enable edit layer. You've probably seen this before if you've enabled the landscape, the landmass plugin in previous versions. I believe this was out since 4.24. And this is one thing that will allow you to create blueprints in order to sculpt your terrain. We're going to talk about landmass in another tutorial, but just so you know, the basics of the water and how the water carves the terrain. If you've seen any of the presentation, you can see that you can just actually move the rivers, the lakes, and the ocean, and it will carve your landscape for you, so you don't have to do any sculpting for the purpose of the water system. So that is because it works with the blueprint system of sculpting. So we're going to enable edit layer, and actually going to create a fairly large landscape. So 1009 here, And this is actually too many components, so I'm just going to do a 2x2. I'm going to reduce these to, I think is 8. Yeah, let's reduce these to 8. And that'll be it. We're going to create our landscape. And there we have it. Alright, so we're going to get out of this mode. I'm not going to do any sculpting right now because we're going to be talking about water in this tutorial. So I'm just going to hit select so we can go back, and as you can see, we have a pretty large landscape over here. So what I want to do is we're going to go over here and we're going to type water in the place actors browser, and you can see we have various different types of water. We have a custom body of water, we have a exclusion volume, we have a body island, we have a body lake, which I'm going to show you real quick how it does. In this tutorial, we're going to focus on the ocean, and I'll focus on these two in other tutorials, but let's just look at them for the sake of the basics. So if we drag a lake over here, you're going to see that if it's the first time you're using the system, it's probably going to take a little bit to compile, but as you can see, it instantly carves the terrain for you, just like I mentioned. So as you can see, if I bring it up, it will bring this terrain up. If I bring it down, it will bring the terrain down, so on and so forth. Same thing with the river. If I drag the river over here, you can see that it instantly carves the terrain, but we have to tell it where to go. It's not 100% out of the box working. So we could do maybe something like this, and we could just lower this point, and now we have a river flowing into a lake. It's actually that easy, but we'll take a look at these closer in another tutorial. All right, so I'm just going to delete these. I'm going to actually be playing with the ocean for now. So if we drag a water body ocean in it, you can see that we have an instant ocean. It's actually pretty big. And one of the things that I'm going to do right now is actually I'm going to carve my terrain with this spline. So the way the water works and the landmass blueprints work is by sculpting your terrain while using a simple spline. So in this spline, you can just move these points. As you can see, the terrain instantly changes by just moving those splines. And we can just keep on editing, and if you wanted to, you could also add another spline point by right clicking on top of the spline and just create another point there, so we can edit this even further. All right, so that's the basics of how you are going to deal with your terrain. There are also some effects here that are part of the landmass. So let's look at some curling noise. It's going to produce some very funky effect here on this terrain. Usually it should be used for sculpting actual terrain, not water, but let's look at what it does. If we do 5, you can see that it kind of tries to add some noise to the landscape, so it creates this weird shape. This may be something that you're looking for, but I'm just showing you things that you can do with this water. So we're going to go back into water. We're going to go into the effects. So we have one type of noise. Let's actually reduce that noise to like 2, so it's not as crazy, and we actually have some pretty neat island over there. So let's try with this curl amount, this 20/10, and see what happens. And again, we are getting some very particular noise, and now the landscape is actually clipping out of the water, and it's producing this effect, which is just not very desirable. So I'm going to bring this down to 1. Let's see, maybe 1.5. And there you go. So we're creating some neat island without actually having to move the splines too much. And let's see what happens if I modify the splines. You can see the island actually forming. So if I go out, this looks like a neat island formation within the landscape I just created. And there is something underneath the water that I'm going to show you in a little bit. But let's keep playing with this. So if I go into curl tiling, you're going to see that this is going to change a little bit. So let's switch that to 6. And there's a lot less tiling on the noise that was being used for the curling. So we get a little bit of a better looking island. So we can also use the curl tile number 2, which will produce this effect. Let's bring it up and see what crazy things happen. So we get a little bit more islands in there. I'm actually going to dial this down to 10. And I'm liking what I see, so I'm going to keep it that way. I'm also going to probably reduce the spline, but again, this is a quick way. You can just do a nice island environment if you want to. So you don't have to only rely on the spline, you can also use these effects. So over here we have the displacement. So in here you can put a displacement texture. I just throw down a little noise masks that I found here, and right now it's going to do some funky things. So I'm just going to, just for the purpose of showing you what it does, I'm going to put it to 5, and you can see that displaces my terrain, and I can create some tiling if I need to, but I'm not going to use this with water just yet. I'm going to do a flat island. Now when it comes to the terrain feature of the water system, you can see there's an edge right here that's not looking that good. So the way that we could solve that is by actually going all the way up here, and the fall off mode, we can just change that to width, and that goes away. It actually looks very smooth and very nice. So this will be a very neat thing for an island. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to jump into the inside of our water. So if we go underneath our water, you're going to see that there's a slope that comes this way, and then it flattens out this way. And the reason for that is because we have this elevation curve asset right here. So in our elevation curve asset, we just have to click here, double click, and we're going to get a curve. This curve can be changed, and you can add keys just by right clicking and add key, and you can change that key to be auto smooth if you wanted to. And as you can see, I'm carving that slope in real time as I move this. All right, so that is, so you can define what's going to be underneath the water. I'm just going to leave it as it is for now. And one thing that you've noticed is as soon as I went underwater, the coloring changed, because there is a post-processing material that will act like your post-processing volume when you go underwater. And another thing, remember, this is still experimental. Right now it's very usable, but this is still experimental, so just be careful when using this. Now if I keep scrolling down, one of the features that we're going to see here is the waves. This is a feature that we would like to use. One thing that you're seeing right now is this looks very random. All the waves look very random, like they're just going every single place at once, and they're not following any wind direction whatsoever. So we can change that by changing the parameters in the waves. So over here we can just click here, and I want to select the Getzner wave, water waves, which is the system that's in there by default, and I can just open this, and we have all the properties here for us to tinker with. So let's try the default first. It's just a number of waves. I heard in one presentation that you should be able to go all the way to 100. Another said that you should be able to go infinite once the water system was out. It's not out yet, it's still experimental, so I'd suggest you keep to 100. But for now, let's just do 34. And you see we get a lot more waves. And you can change the seed. This is just a randomizer. So if you change it to another number, again, it's just a random seed. So that's just going to change how your waves are randomly appearing. The next thing that we want to take a look at is the wave length. So right now we have a minimum and a maximum, and we also have a fall off. So the length is between 521 and 6,000, which is a very steep difference. If we bring that wavelength down to, let's say, 1500, you're gonna see some really nice peaks here. Okay, so just like a wave, if you've seen a graphic of a wave, if you reduce the wavelength, there'll be a lot of peaks. So that's what you're seeing here. So if you didn't want your waves to be as big, you can just reduce this. So I'm just going to do 250 here, and you can see that it looks a lot noisier, but we can solve that by changing the amplitude down here. So if we go into the amplitude, and I'm going to change the maximum to something like 20, you can see that flattens out really quickly. and it looks much better. It looks more like a calmer ocean. So I'm just going to do this 2 and 15. So it's a little bit more of like, calm water, something that would be beneath a gulf and all that. Now the next thing that we have here is the direction of the wind. So if I pull this out, you have a dominant wind angle, which is in degrees, and it's going to tell the engine in which direction the wind should be blowing. And we have another control here, which is the angular spread. So this is kind of like a randomizer if you don't want your waves to be flowing in line in a particular direction. I'm going to show you how that looks like. So if we were to zero this out, you're going to see that we just have a little line of waves that are just going into the 0 angle. So if I change this to, let's say, 90 or 180, now the waves are actually coming towards the beach like they do in real life, which is a little bit better than what we had before, but they are in a straight single line, which is not that good. So that is why we have this second parameter right here, which can help us break those lines a little bit. So let me do 25, and that is actually looking a lot better. You can go higher than that, but I think I'm going to stick with 25 or 30. Okay, now we have some nice waves coming in, and we also have the steepness. I'm actually going to get the max amplitude all the way to 30 so you guys can see the steepness working. So over here we have how steep are the small waves and the large waves. So let's see, if we do a steepness of 5, which is pretty exaggerated, you're going to see something really crazy going on, and this is just not good. It's just a bunch of noise happening. So let's just dial that back to 1. You can see that we have kind of like big stylized waves trying to form in there. And so let's just bring that down to default so it's not as jarring. And actually, this peaks that we have right here, I actually want to get rid of those peaks. So I'm just going to change that back to the amplitude that we had before, which is 25. And I'm going to decrease the steepness. So if we bring this to, let's say, 15 and this to 0.1, you can see that kind of softened off the peaks of the waves, and we no longer had that weird shading on top of that. All right, right after that we have the water material. So if we just click on the magnifying glass, it's going to take us to the water material, and we have the water material right here. I've already messed a little bit with some parameters before, but there are plenty of things that we can change in this water material. And mainly, if you want to make this water a different color, this is the one that I'm going to be talking about today. We'll go deeper in another tutorial because, again, the water system is so big, it will take me several videos to talk about it. So let's just talk about this part right here. If you don't like the color of your water, you can just change the parameters right here and you get a different look. However, this isn't your run-of-the-mill RGBA system. A is for alpha, R is for red, G is for green, and B is for blue. And the reason why I say this is because they made this so it follows the water spectrum. Actually, Ryan Brooks has an explanation about that. But just so you know, it doesn't follow the regular RGB coloring. So if we change, let's say if we're going to change the alpha, let's change that to 2, you can see that this turns into kind of like a deeper color of blue, and we have a lot less clarity over here, because if I bring this up to 8 again, you can see that we have a little bit more kind of like fading out of the color. So let me just draw some parameters that I have previously done. So this is something that I've been playing with. I just played with some of the parameters And this gave me this kind of like deep blue kind of water that you will actually see more in the ocean, because what we had before, this is kind of like your shallow water or your very stylized, because I believe this was made for Fortnite. And this is more like what you'll see in places like Bora Bora or something, but the water is so shallow and so clear that you can see it in this coloring. But this is some parameters if you want to copy those and start playing with those, so you can get your own color of water. And I'm actually going to throw in a material over this so you guys can see how it looks with a material and not just a checkerboard. So if I go down here, let's go into our Megascans. And again, these Megascans are brought from 4.25 via migration. I didn't use the plugin just yet because there's some couple of issues with it. So I'm just going to throw this material here. And as you can see, if we get closer, let me just reduce the camera speed all the way down to 3. You can see that water reacting with its material along with the shore, and it looks really neat. Okay, or if you want, we can actually return the water material to its previous state, so you guys can see that with the landscape. And I'm just gonna go down there and reset this. By the way, if you are resetting this to default, do not click here. If you click there, this would just zero it out. But if you click here, it will bring it to its default. So there you go. All right, everybody, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. This was just a basic, and I will continue to iterate and talk about the water system, because again, there's so much that we can do with this water system. Not everything works right out of the box. We'll be talking about that later. Remember to like, subscribe, make sure you leave a comment for the algorithm. And there's also the Patreon. Don't forget about that. There's our Patreon this month, our very first Patreon. Thank you very much. And I'll see you in the next video.